Shri Sanjeev Agarwal ji, Shri Hemant Jain ji, Shri Saket Dalmia ji, Dr. Ranjit Mehta ji, distinguished former presidents of PhD CCI, dear friends. I'm really very, very pleased today to have an opportunity to share my thoughts about Viksit Bharat with all of you. And it's a very good time to do this because I think all of us right now are very much, for understandable reasons, thinking about the future of our country. So I tell people that, and those of us who live in Delhi, many of us will be pressing a button in the next few days. And the button is not just for the next 5 years, that button is for Viksit Bharat. So please keep that very much in your mind. Now, this is a time, in a democracy, every 5 years, we have a big debate about what has happened, what has not happened, what could have happened, what will happen. And to my mind, those debates are very useful because they give a certain direction to the flow of events. For the public, sometimes consciously, sometimes not, they indicate choices, they indicate different kinds of thinking. And in a way, they also put before all of you a certain record which allows the people of our country to make their choice. So at this time, I would urge you, as someone, you're all people very deep in the business world, you're very practical, experienced, grounded people. So my point to you today is very simple. Look at the data points, look at the record, look at the performance, just as you would do in your everyday life. That when you make choices in your business, you do so, not necessarily taking people's words at face value. You take a very long, hard look at what they have achieved and then make your judgment. Now, when we come to this part of the exercise before us, I think, to me at least, some of the contrasts are very, very clear. We have 10 years of transformation since 2014. I contrast that to 50 years when the Congress party is in power. We've had a single government, single party majority. We have still a coalition, but one party has a majority. I think look at what are the consequences for the country when one party has a majority versus a period when there is a coalition government. Because these are not hypothetical issues. There is a record, there is a history, there's an experience. All of you at some point have been through this choice of majority versus coalition. You can see the change of the last 10 years. Please remember the earlier period as well. And I particularly mention this because in the course of this election, actually there's been a lot of talk about returning to past policies. That, we will do a survey of the economy, we will ensure redistribution. So for someone like me, old enough to remember the era of permits and licenses, I think these bring back memories which are not very nice. So I do think in many ways today, the choices before us are very much the choices of the future or of the past. In a way, whether the Gadi of Bharat should go on 4th gear, 5th gear, or whether it should actually go on reverse gear. Now, those are, I think, in a way, the conceptual thoughts of the moment, the mood of the moment. But let me come really to actually the record, and I don't go back very far in history. All of us today are very engrossed in the issues of our times. So let's just take maybe last 5 years, maybe even 5, 7, 8 years. And I want to ask you all one question. I'll give you a set of situations. I want you to think, if that situation happened again, who would you like to have in charge of the country? So the first challenge I give you is actually COVID. And I begin with COVID because, as you all know, COVID is a once in a century happening. All of us have been deeply personally affected by COVID. There's not a single person who would have escaped it. We felt it not only in our lives, in our health, in our habits, but in our professions, in our interests, in our relationships. So think about COVID, because I want to share with you that when the first discussion started about COVID, I'm talking of January of 2020. Prime Minister Modi actually created a group of 6 ministers, and our job was really to, frankly, drop everything else and really look at COVID. And we were meeting almost continuously, day in, multiple sessions every day. And I still remember that picture of COVID spreading through the world. With each passing day, each passing week, increasingly the sense that it cannot be stopped, it will come. And then looking at what we could do in India and what were our preparations. And I can tell you at that time, it was a really, I would say, to say it was concerning would be a huge understatement. That we actually saw, even something as basic as masks, how little production there was in the country. I'm not even talking of ventilators. PPEs, ventilators were like high-tech at that time. Something which was beyond kind of a daily production requirement. From where we were to what we were able to do within a year. That within a year, we were able to organize ourselves. We created COVID centers. We produced the masks, the PPEs, the ventilators. We were able to ramp up the medicine, the drug production, the pharmaceutical production, not only for ourselves, but actually meeting a lot of demands for the rest of the world. Now, how did this happen? It happened because the Prime Minister of the day, the government of the day, took a very, a serious, sober view of this challenge, relied on the ability of this country, motivated this country to actually rise to this challenge. So the same country, because my first international meeting on COVID was actually a G20 virtual meeting. Modi ji was obviously there for India. And I was sitting behind him. And I can tell you the sum and substance of the meeting is, look, COVID is coming. No, you can't stop it. Every one of us is going to take a hit. The biggest hit will be taken by India. This was the briefing given to the G20 leaders. And it is India's whose recovery will be the most challenging. Reality turned out to be very different. And I mentioned that to you because when you ask yourself, what is leadership? Who do you want? When you think of who should be leading the country, who would you like to see in that regard? I think the COVID experience may be something instructive. I then switched to something very different. While COVID was going on, China decided in the month of end April, early May, to move a very, very large number of forces to our border. This was in violation of multiple agreements that we were not supposed to bring such large number of forces to the border, and we are not supposed to bring weapons to the border. Now, at that time, we are talking April, May. Do remember, we were all under lockdown. Okay? All of you were sitting in your homes. Nothing was moving on the street. The airlines were shut down, the railways, the roads. In this situation, Prime Minister Modi took the decision that we will send our forces. I don't care what we have to do, but if they are coming, we will be there, right there to meet them. So I put this to you actually as a kind of a crisis situation, because this is a crisis within a crisis. This China thing is happening when the lockdown actually is at its peak. That in this crisis, to have someone absolutely determined and resolute saying, no, you all have to do, every part of the system has to do whatever it has to do, but those multiple tens of thousands of troops with their tanks, with their artillery, with whatever they have to do, will be out there, because there will be no compromise in the defense of India. That to me was also an experience. And I asked myself at that time, had there been someone less resolute, someone more confused, someone less nationalistic, someone less clear in their definition, in their response to our national security needs, what would have happened to the country? Now, there are many such examples. Some of them even today, there are many decisions which were made in the last 4 or 5 years which affect the country's economy today. I give you 2 examples. During COVID, there was tremendous pressure on us to increase public spending in a massive way. Okay? Because everybody else, especially Western countries, said, oh, that is how we have dealt with COVID. Okay? Now, you all know that from 2014, we had made huge efforts to actually get the fiscal deficit under control. The fiscal deficit inherited in 2014 was very concerning. Due to a great effort at discipline, it had been brought down, inflation levels had come down. Now, we came under tremendous pressure at that time, actually to reverse everything that we had done in 6 years. And you had a government and a prime minister who were clear that they would not do this, that they will think through the problem for themselves, but they will find some other solution, which actually was a better solution. The solution was to actually directly reach out to the targeted groups most affected by the lockdown and find ways of supporting them in a manner which was overall beneficial to the economy. And that is really what happened. Now, I fast forward you 2 years from there. The Ukraine war had started. Straight immediately, within the first 6 hours, petrol prices, oil prices went up. Within a few days, food prices went up. Fertilizer prices went up. Now, we again came to a moment of choice. We frankly came under a situation of stress, which is some countries, very powerful countries, because they were looking at it from their perspective, as people do. From their perspective, they felt that there should be a total economic boycott of Russia. The problem for us was they were customers of Russia and they had now started buying in the Gulf and the Middle East, which was our supplier. So our supplier now jacked up the prices. Now, what do you do in this situation? You either have a clear sense of your own interest, have the courage, the determination to say, no, my interests require me to do this. Or because these are very powerful, influential countries, you say, okay, bhai, if you say so, this is what we will do. Now, again, you have a situation where, people often bring up this issue with me. And I tell them, look, I never had a problem from day one. That the first meeting where I went into, where this issue came up, My instructions from my Prime Minister were very clear. Please tell the world that you will do whatever is in Indian national interest and whatever is in the interest of the Indian consumer and the Indian public. And the Indian consumer and the Indian public's interest was best served by getting the best deal we could in the energy market. And in fact, it wasn't, frankly, I don't even regard it as an act of selfishness, because had we, I'm talking to our business community out here, had we not bought Russian oil, the oil market would have tightened and everybody would have paid more, actually. We actually softened oil prices at a very, very critical moment. So these have kept one after another. These issues keep coming up. For me, a very important policy choice which was made by the Modi government has been actually the push towards supporting manufacturing. The second is actually the tremendous commitment towards facilitating digital technologies. Now there are big advantages. We can all see that today. The more services which are digital, less corruption there is, the time is less. We've been able to do many programs. We have been able to do many programs on a massive scale. We could not have done it before. Today, if you look at any of these social schemes of the government, they run to tens of crores. We were not even running to tens of lakhs in the earlier period. But here again, we today think it is automatic. We think it is normal. And I want to share with you something I read, when Modi ji had done 20 years in government. Some of us who had got to know him, decided we will put our impressions of him. Because each one of us had some, we saw him from a different vantage point. One of the I think that's a commercial break. But if whoever it is can kindly, but the point is, I found a very interesting insight from actually Nandan Nilekani. Nandan Nilekani, in that particular collection which we had done, he actually said, he's now talking, of the UPA government time. So he says, he had brought Aadhaar to a certain point. And then he went around the country trying to interest people in the government about the potential of Aadhaar. Now, Nandan Nilekani has no political, he's in this matter neutral. He has no axe to grind. He says at that time, this is well before 2014, he said, I went to different chief ministers, to ministers. He's a very courteous man, so he puts it very nicely. Levels of interest were not always that strong. He said, the one person who actually, he said, I went in there, I'm sort of saying this by memory, I went in there for a short meeting, the person cleared his desk, and then I had a long session with him about what are the possibilities, how can Aadhaar be used to actually change governance. So what often are, when all of us press a button, the cascading choices which happens, we may be pressing it for our representative. Our representative feeds into what is the thinking or the party which governs. That feeds into who will lead the government. And that actually feeds into crucial decisions. That if we've had a technology-focused Prime Minister, you are seeing the results of that today. So think of the flip side. If you don't have a technology-focused Prime Minister, what would you have missed? So I think these These are our own experiences. I'm not giving you hypothetical examples. I'm not talking, this manifesto says this and that manifesto. I'm giving you real life situations in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Decisions made, judgments taken, preferences of the people of, in this case, often the Prime Minister in power, and the consequences for the country. And to me, often, because again, there is one thing which often people say to me, that governments change, but foreign policy doesn't change. All foreign ministers have to hear this. It's like we don't count. We are doing it on autopilot. And I tell people, not because I want to count, I tell people actually it's not true. And the sharpest example I can give you, and that is the example when I say, it matters who is in power. It matters what is their gut instinct, what is their belief. Look at our response to 26/11 in Mumbai, and look at our response to Uri and Balakot. I think nothing can tell you more clearly, more sharply. Because, at the end of the day, the armed forces are the same. The bureaucracy is the same. The intelligence is the same. So, if you look at what are the structural inputs and responses of the system, it would be the same. But what happens is, if the CPU changes up there, the output is very different. And that is really what you saw, that between 26/11, that something as big as 26/11 happened without a strong response on our side. And that, in many ways, actually led to a feeling that this country can be repeatedly punched and pushed and things happen, and that they will keep absorbing it, they will keep reacting to it, and they will protest, and the world will say, yes, very bad, now please calm down, and life will go on. Now, Uri and Balakot was meant to demonstrate that no, life will not go on, and that there will be a price. And don't think because you've done something and run away to that site that you are safe there. You will not be safe there. You will not be safe across the line of control, you will not be safe across the international boundary. So there was a very, very clear, direct message out there. And I think the people to whom that message was intended to be sent hopefully got it. So I shared a lot of these thoughts because these are actual situations where who is in power, who's taking the shots. And often, one experience I've had during the last few weeks and months. Very often, when you go, I've had this in Pune, I had it in Sambalpur in Orissa, I've had it in Rajasthan. Families of people who were rescued during various operations, or sometimes the student themselves, or the young, or the person themselves, will actually come to one of your meetings to just come and say thank you. So I ask people, imagine if you were the parents or the spouse or the child of one of those people. Who would you have liked that day to be in charge of the government? If it happens again, because the world is a very difficult place. It is a very, conflicts are going on right now. There's a war in Ukraine, there's a conflict in Gaza, there are problems in, South China Sea. The world's a mess. If there is a major national security crisis, it could be at the borders, like I said, China border, terrorism, yes. But it could be something very personal. You or your relative, your near and dear, may be in some situation where your safety and security is at stake. At that time, whose judgment, whose courage, whose acumen, whose networking, whose prestige, whose standing would you trust? Keep that in mind when you start going towards that button. Now, having said that, I want to share just a few thoughts about Viksit Bharat itself, and then perhaps we could make this more into a discussion. What do we actually mean? What's our, when we talk about Viksit Bharat, there's a vision, all of us have some gut sense of what it is we want to do. I think definitely we would like to see, at a very basic level, we want poverty to be removed in this country. Because you cannot be Viksit if there are a large number of poor people. And I really count, when I look at the last 10 years, I very much count the fact that 250 million people, 25 crore people have come out of poverty as one of actually the great achievements of this government. Not just bringing them out of poverty, when you look at the kind of socio-economic reach out that we do. Because in a Viksit Bharat, nobody can be left behind. Then it is not Viksit. And some of the examples we see in the developed world today to actually teach us, saying that is not the model to go. That you cannot have, one part of the country going forward. And okay, I accept everybody cannot move at the same speed. But everybody has to move. Everybody has to go up. So, a lot of these schemes today, I think they represent the basis of what would be a kind of social welfare system in India. Today, we are actually able to provide healthcare for 35 crore people. It's a very impressive number. Fact that we give mudra loans to almost 50 crore people. The fact that actually 20 crore people have got housing over the last 10 years. Because about 4 crore houses have been provided. You look at any of these numbers, these are really staggering numbers. Even Ujjwala is 10 crore, 100 million households today have switched from firewood to gas. Remember, 100 million households were burning firewood 10 years ago, which are not doing so today. So one part of it is to create a social welfare system. The second is actually, and I'm now speaking to the converted here, actually to reform and constantly improve your governance and your growth culture, which means, a lot, these kinds of things I'm talking about, which is use digital tools, create more transparent rules, reduce discretion, make the movement, make the decision making itself much clearer. And I can say in many ways, my department was one of the pioneers of this. All of you, I assume, have passports. And all of you, I would urge you, please remember the time when it was so difficult and so painstaking to get a passport. Because, the moment there is a change, we all, we absorb it so fast that we forget that there was a period before that there were experiences. Because nobody wants to remember bad experiences. You want to remember the nicer things which have happened. So, improvement, social welfare system, to me, governance and growth culture. I would say in this, there is I call it like a formula, a sort of tried and tested formula. If I were to sum up the transformation of the last 10 years, I would say it's a combination of making it easier to do business, improving ease of living, changing infrastructure through Gati Shakti, improving our human resources, giving support to small businesses, giving support to exports, then creating a kind of a startup culture. Now, if all these things continue, each one is a building block of what will take us towards Viksit Bharat. And some of them are actually, without them, it just won't work. We were, till 10 years ago, we kept saying we are growing at a high rate, but look at what was the state of our infrastructure then. Today, we can actually hold our heads up high and say, if you look at the rate of infrastructure today growth in this country, this matches actually the best in the world. That we are building 28, 29 kilometers of highway every day. We're building 14 kilometers of railway track every day. Every day. We are creating 8 new airports every year. We are building 1 to 2 metros, new metros every year. Now, part of it is to keep doing this because we're still playing catch up. We have to make up for a period when we lag behind. But the other part is also to look a little bit forward. We don't want to be, do something which others have done. They have moved on, but we have only, we are happy reaching that level. So to me, a project like Bullet Train, I often get questions about it. And I tell people, I was in Japan when we negotiated the Delhi Metro agreement. Okay, it was Atalji's government at that time. To be honest, at that time, a lot of people said, why our relations with Japan were not good, okay, at that time. This was after the nuclear test. So it required a lot of effort, lot of tact, lot of diplomacy to get that agreement going. And I still remember people asked us, saying, why is that important? We have lived without metro for so long. So we can live without metro. Now today, ask yourself, if one line of Delhi metro shuts down, what are the consequences for this city? Look at all the important cities of this country. Look at the number of metros which are actually in the pipeline. You cannot have urbanization, serious urbanization without metro. And had we missed out on that opportunity, we would still be grappling with it today. I mean, in a sense, the bullet train is the same challenge. That if we can take these distances, 300, 500, 600 kilometers, and create high-speed movements. And it is the intention of the Modi government that going forward, we actually envisage bullet trains in multiple places. In every zone of India will have its bullet train because there are key centers where it actually makes sense. And it has huge economic and technology implications. Now, I'm talking to you of what has happened so far. But let me also say, we need to plan for the future. We need to grow for today, but we need to leapfrog for tomorrow. And Viksit Bharat means getting ready for AI, having the semiconductor capabilities, preparing for electric vehicles, looking at green tech and clean tech, looking at drones and defense exports and space. These actually will be the new industries. And guess what? These are all very, I would say, talent-centric businesses. So that country, which is, one of the discussions I must tell you today in the world is how the same countries which were resistant, which didn't used to give visas to Indians before, they are actually today actively scouting talent in different countries. I actually have Europeans who have set up offices to recruit people, promise them even educational support if they give a bond that they will work in these kind of sunrise industries in the coming years. Now imagine if actually we could do a lot of this ourselves. I don't think you need to imagine it. I think we will be compelled to do it. Because Viksit Bharat means actually preparing for it. Viksit Bharat also means actually preparing for a global workplace. Because given the demographic shortages in the world, there will be many demands and services for which, frankly, India will be part of the solution. We don't have to go out of India physically. For that, I think the way business itself is done will change. So these were some of the thoughts. And, again, it's always good to put some numbers on any speech that you give. And I want to, remind you all that there is actually, in a way, a Goldman Sachs target definition of what is Viksit Bharat. They estimate that we today, who are a below $4 trillion economy, become 5 very, very soon. But even in this period of Amrit Kaal, which we're talking about, we will cross $30 trillion economy. And by 2075, we will actually be the second biggest economy in the world. Except I don't believe we will remain second biggest. I think it's not in our nature. We always like to overtake anybody who's ahead of us. This is certainly, I would say it's actually an Indian driving habit, not just a Delhi driving habit. So I'm very sure, but finally come back to it, that at the end of the day, when we look at Viksit Bharat, we need to have the good judgments to set the country on the path to Viksit Bharat. We need to have the ambition to define for ourselves what is Viksit Bharat. And then hopefully those who we trust to guide the nation in that direction will take us forward. Thank you very much for your patience, for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Your address not only celebrated the country's achievement, but also set a clear roadmap for a continued development, reflecting your profound understanding of India's potential and the strategic pathways to harness it. Your words are a testament to your diplomatic acumen and visionary leadership, instilling a sense of pride and optimizing among all of us about India's bright future. Thank you, sir. With permission, sir, can I ask a first question, sir, please? Sir, your adept handling of international diplomacy has significantly elevated India's standing on the global stage. Under your leadership, India has navigated complex international relations with great skill and strategic foresight. Given the current geopolitical situation, particularly with rising tensions in regions like Eastern Europe and India-Pacific, what strategic measures is India adopting to safeguard its interest and enhance its influence in these critical areas? Sir.
Thank you, because in many ways, actually, that is the message which I have tried to give out through my new book, which came out this year. Look, we are growing. We will continue to grow. It can slow down or be faster depending on what the circumstances are. But what we have to do is to plan for the fact that the global environment in the foreseeable future will be very, very difficult. We learned that lesson during COVID when our exposure to other economies, वहाँ से components नहीं आए, वो bulk drugs नहीं आया, supplies नहीं आए, and business was affected in this country. So the lesson from that is that the more production and manufacturing we do at home, to me, Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat were completely validated by our COVID experience. So I would say today, and I don't even regard that anymore as an economic issue. I regard it actually as a national security issue. That for me, national security means in a large set of domains, India should have the capability to meet at least the basic Indian requirements in many areas. And we must plan for this because, as I said, right now we are having two major wars. I mean, it's been for many, many years, people cannot remember the world in this kind of situation. So if we plan for a very disturbed environment and then say that is the basis on which we should grow, I think we should look at it very differently. And in a way, I would say, that mentality जो globalization के समय में होता था, that at the end of the day we look at the world and say, अच्छा, let us look at comparative cost. I think that era is now going behind us. That in some cases, in fact, there will be very sharp divisions. There will be, say, digital. You will have to make some choices. Do we work with the West or do we work with an alternative? Because it will not be possible in every area to say, hum dono karenge, we'll get the best.
So it's really commendable, sir, the way you handled the crisis. And sir, we should certainly give a round of applause to sir. I would like to request Senior Vice President Hemant Jain to ask a question, please.
So thank you for taking the time and coming here. I've been in chambers for some time. I've never seen this kind of audience, which is some is here and some is across into 3 hours. And I really love your sense of humor and your sense of fashion also. We all are learning from a sense of fashion and wearing Nehru jackets now rather than wearing the suits and all. So,
वो मेरा फैशन नहीं था, वो किसी और का था.
So we follow that. We follow that. I didn't want to say that in the larger public. We all follow that sign, and you can see most of the people here also following it, sir. So today, sir, we have operations in Qatar. We have the largest industrial investment into Qatar and into Thailand, other places. So we used to meet the administration there and also the ambassadors in those countries. So when I was also privy to when Mr. Modi visited Qatar, and I was also part of the delegation, Qatari delegation, not the Indian delegation. So things have changed this was in first term. Things have changed over the last 10 years. India's voice was heard, but somehow it's being heard more louder and more clearer. So what has transformed, sir? Because you are part of this external affairs ministry who's seen this transformation from voice being heard, but not as loud as possible, not as clear as possible, and which has made all of us proud also as Indians, because we are today having this pride in us that we are being heard and we are being acknowledged across the world.
Well, I think, in terms of how the world sees us, there are two parts to it. One, the world is very clinical, very ruthless about judging countries and judging, people. If our image has gone up, it is because actually the country has changed. When they see a country recovering after COVID, 7% growth, infrastructure ban raha hai, in different domains things are happening, people look at it. Because in every domain, you yourself mentioned Thailand, Qatar, people look saying, okay, this is what they're doing in green hydrogen, this is what they're doing in telecom, today they're manufacturing telephones, they are doing defense exports. So they look actually at real performance the way a business world would judge a competitor. Because world is competitive, So don't think that anybody is being nice to us. The world is very, very clear in a performance evaluation of India. If today they give us more respect because they rate your performance evaluation, our performance evaluation better, number one. Secondly, as it happens, in many cases, your product can be very good, your services can be very good, but what is the confidence, what is the marketing, what is the branding, how do you actually position it in the world? And I think in many cases they see that, once Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, they in many ways look, any country's image is associated with the leader. Today, if you think of France, you would say Macron, you think of America, you would say Biden, you would think of Russia, you would say Putin. Today, in the eyes of the world, it is Modi, So if your performance has been very strong and, the projection of it, the positioning of it, the confidence with which you deal, and all these crises that I gave you, those 6, 7, 8 examples. This is not just a conversation between Indians. It's a globalized world. They also say, how are you standing on the China border? How did you come out of COVID? How did you deal with 5G? Whose technology do you have? How did you reach the moon? Each of these actually is part of it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, just one thing, sir. What changed the CPU? You have mentioned that CPU changed the way things work. So what was the transformation CPU did to transform this into a global power?
भाई वो CPU ही बदल गया ना 14 में.
I'd like to invite our Sakir Dalmia, former Vice President.
Sir, I wanted to continue on that thought process. So, a very big significant change which we saw. I have two girls. One came back from America. The other one is studying there. And I saw a big transformation when my younger daughter, halfway into undergraduate, she asks me, Dad, I have these two friends who want to come back to India for a summer internship. So till now, I was always talking about her taking a summer internship at Goldman Sachs or whatever. So suddenly I felt that what I was thinking that, the world is going to come to India to get experience, to make inroads and to get employed here. So is it like a one-off, or are you hearing this from several nations as to, what's the roadmap for their students, their career seekers to come into India, get imbibed into our employment system? Is it like a worldwide phenomenon you see, sir, taking shape very soon?
I don't know if I can give you a considered answer. I perhaps that hasn't picked up enough as yet. But my experience is quite similar to yours, which is I find many more, because look, I spent most of my working life in some country, a quarter of it in India, but a large part of it outside. So of the people I know, there are a lot of people who today from the business world who I've known over many, many years, who today actually find ways of connecting to Indian businesses, wanting to understand our environment better. And it's very interesting here, the Indians who went abroad actually have suddenly, that they have become a bridge. Earlier there was a bridge to the world. Now from the world they have become also a bridge to India. And a lot of this internship interest is actually some. I'm very sure the world, a large part of the world is actually waiting for June 4th. Okay, if they see a very strong mandate saying this movement, what today we would say movement towards Viksit Bharat has got a big push, has got a strong support from the people. I actually expect to see the world reacting in a very, very positive way to more collaborations, more investments, more dealings with the Indian economy. Because imagine for a moment you're not in India. Look around the world today. Where do you see that stability? Where do you see that growth rate? Where do you see the demand? Where do you see that talent? Where do you see that business interest? In many parts of the world, business is actually downsizing. It's not growing. So I think we are on to a good thing, and I do expect, come June, that we will actually see a...
Thank you, sir. I think you just reinforced those thoughts in my mind and giving a holistic view. Thank you so much.
I would like to invite past presidents to have some questions.
Sir, let me just add to what has already been said. I am one of the fans of how you really give a response to the questions, and in a witty way, and not only here, but I think everywhere we have seen your press interviews, especially in Europe and other places, wherever the point is, and how you really stand and put India in front of that. So I think our compliments for that, sir. And we sincerely appreciate. Sir, only one question I have is, how do you really see to manage the complex relationship with China? Because you see, that's something which is, a lot of industries are engaged in business with China. And we have seen our last, let's say, 7, 8 months or 10 months or a year, that now the visas are not being given to them to visit India. So where businesses are, our businesses are also affected. We are not very fond of it, but somehow we are stuck into that. So how do you really see that, how do we manage complex relationships?
You see, this is one of the big issues before us today, because it's not today's issue. It is the actions of, or the non-actions of, inactions of 30, 40 years, which have today brought us to the present situation. When I look from the perspective of business, okay, I can see that in many cases, business would like to find a source, a competitive source, in many ways, someone with whom they have done business before. And China today globally accounts almost for 1/3 of the world manufacturing. So in many ways, that logic makes a lot of our business go to China. The problem that we face as a country, and I would say even face as a business, is if that segment of our business which we are talking about, if they continue to go to China, and because China in many ways, Chinese businesses have advantages over our own business, advantages of scale, of subsidies, of a degree of support, which in our system is not possible to give. So what it does is, and this it is not hypothetical, it has happened in the last 20, 30 years, that actually a lot of our own smaller businesses are getting, played out because people are going to China instead of looking for a domestic vendor or domestic supplier. We are not unique in facing this problem. I would say other countries face it. Some have dealt with it a little bit better. Some of them have struggled. America is struggling with it today. That is one of the big issues today in American politics. Countries like Japan and Korea have dealt with it differently. In their culture, there is much more SME, I would say big business. The domestic supply chain is much stronger. It developed over many, many years. So I feel today that there needs to be a good understanding between business and the government. We would certainly like to see Indian business source more from Make in India. We want Indian business to do more in Make in India. Because if we keep saying there is a better solution outside, over a period of time, more and more of our business will be hollowed out. So even if it means sometimes going through a period of challenge, we would definitely like to build up, Make in India in this country. Now, that is where a lot of these new industries offer us new possibilities. Because here, in certain cases, as I said, we are not going to have many choices. There will, if you look at certain businesses, you look at drones, you look at the whole telecom sector today. Actually, the domestic industry has grown tremendously. Auto is an example. So we'll have to, that part of the reason why we started down the production-linked incentive was exactly to encourage, growth of this. But we have to create that culture and that motivation among people. I understand, I don't look at it in a sort of a government bureaucratic way. I mean, we also see that industry has some real problems. We are trying to be flexible and, understanding about it. But we cannot have a policy, I'll be equally frank with you, we cannot have a policy where essentially industry in India means integrating products and components and subsystems which are made in another country. That is not our definition of how manufacturing and industry should be in this country.
Yeah.
Namaskar, sir. Good to see you in person. Well, I will press the button with the lotus on it. So, I totally agree with whatever you have said, sir. And it's good to see India taking a leadership role in the Red Sea as well, which is the first time I've actually seen India taking a leadership role in such a global problem. My dilemma is something else, sir. These 3 or 4 months of election time, all the leaders taking the stage and giving the speeches, and the kind of speeches that are happening, and which actually also includes speeches by our present Prime Minister, it's actually disheartening. I mean, you can imagine millions of people follow, not only PM Modi, but I'm talking about everybody who gets on that stage and speaks. It goes in their head. It stays there for years and years. And after 5 years, again, it's going to repeat. How are we going to get to Viksit Bharat with such a mindset of our population? Even PM Modi, sir, you listen to his speeches of 2014 and you listen to his speeches of 2024. There is a big change, sir. I personally liked the speeches in 2014 much more than today. I'll still press the lotus button. I will. But, I really want the attitude and the mindset of the population of this country to be hit in a positive way for Viksit Bharat. That's all.
Look, I think in a way, perhaps you are in a position from your particular vantage point to have such a view. I mean, that is your privilege. But please understand, there is a political contest today actually going on. If issues are being raised, the issues are not invented issues. These are real issues out there. These are real issues. Let's be honest. We cannot be in denial of the fact that many of our debates have religion as faith as an issue. You may be uncomfortable personally with it, but your discomfort doesn't mean the issue doesn't exist out there in the real world. They exist. If today many of those issues have come up, why have they come up? They have come up because actually they have penetrated into the public debate. I mean, I'm just giving you 2-3 examples because you didn't mention it, but I have no hesitation in mentioning it. We are talking about a whole campaign that if there is today overwhelming result, that result means that there'll be a change in the constitution and some provisions of the constitution have been mentioned. Now you actually look at the record. The record shows very clearly who changed the constitution 80% and who did the rest. Now, if we keep quiet, because you say, well, that's not the kind of speech you should be giving. You're giving the other guy a free pass. He will keep saying what he has to say. He's actually been doing it. The same thing is happening. I mean, look, we have done, reservations, affirmative action in this country. There has always been a basis for it. From the time Constitution was done, it was not mixed up with faith, but it is now being mixed up with faith. So if, let us say, in the public space, somebody comes and says, oh, we should be doing all those things, and I am quiet because you want me to give a 10-year-old speech. How do I contest what this guy is putting out? So please understand, this is, sometimes politics is very visceral. It is very vigorous. One thing, you cannot give a free pass to wrong ideas. You have to contest it.
Gopal ji.
Sir, I don't want to repeat what everybody said, but first point I want to make is on the China issue. I think what you said as a policy, I think is perfectly fine. But if you could segregate between consumption goods and capital goods, I think if you are going to throttle the capital goods, which is actually leading to the consumption goods production, and where the demand of consumption goods will go up, will lead to the capital goods industry coming to India. So I think you should look at, in my opinion, a little more easy policy for the capital goods versus the consumption goods. So that's first point. And second one, sir, I want to know about FTAs. So one, what is the role of the foreign ministry when the FTAs are decided? Second, sir, historic data shows that India has not gained too much from FTAs across the larger spectrum of industry. Some, yes, would have gained. So how do we tackle this, as we see there are a lot of FTAs under negotiation, and maybe as the new government comes in place, many of them would be signed, the UK one or the other ones. So as you said that the government is very keen that the Indian industry becomes stronger and they don't fade away, what role will FTAs play to make sure this doesn't happen?
Your first point regarding the China handling, I am not in disagreement with it. I think we are, for example, many PLI related schemes, projects required flexibility, and we have shown that flexibility. I think we don't have a knee-jerk dogmatic policy. I think in many cases we look at the merits of the case. So I'm fundamentally in agreement with you. Regarding FTA, I can sense some reservation in the way you expressed it. And I want to say to you very honestly, I completely share that. I would be very cautious about FTAs because I will tell you, there was an era when we entered into many FTAs because in a way it was almost like a fashion. सब लोग कर रहे हैं तो चलिए हम भी कर देते हैं. Reform means globalization. Globalization means openness. Now, to me, if you ask me, am I for open economy? Yes. But if you ask me, does open economy mean that a foreign player gets an advantage in India over a domestic producer? I say no. How can it be? But that is what actually we had allowed, because he is bringing a whole lot of factors of production. As I said, including support, subsidies, scale, all sorts of things. And then we make it hard for our industry. So from the start, because look, we had a very big debate even about RCEP. Ultimately, why did we not sign RCEP? At that time, I remember if I were to look at 100 press commentaries about RCEP, 95 of them criticized the government. I'll be very honest with you. Today, if you ask people, bhai, acha kiya ya nahi kiya, everybody says, yes, sir, you are very wise. So we need to be very, look, the way we see it, here is the Indian economy, okay, let's say 4 trillion, going to have 30, 40 years of growth. Other people's businesses must not get access to this economy for free. They should not get access in a way in which they have an advantage. ये level playing field नहीं है. Actually, we must be a country where actually the playing field is loaded against our own business. So I think we need to be very clear on it. I can tell you this is certainly the thinking of the leadership of the government. If you look at our, you look at our, I would say, record of the last 10 years, we don't always get high marks from the globalized economists of the world. We can live without it. But I would actually be much more, for me, the interests I serve are of the workers and the employers of India. I would put that actually as the judgment, as the yardstick to take a policy call.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Sir, I really idolize your intellect and I wish to be like you one day. But I do work on environmental activism, so I would like to ask you this question. Can we foresee a comprehensive international environmental program in the Viksit Bharat where we exhibit active leadership as we did in the G20 in the recent past?
I'm glad you asked that because what had happened for many years was that when it came to environmental issues, climate change issues, and the two are kind of linked broadly, we were often on the defensive. Okay. Now, the fact is, there is our own well-being at stake. And number two, there are actually new opportunities. So, if one looks in the last few years, it's to me very interesting that the big ideas at this COP, the COP summits, many of them actually have come from Prime Minister Modi. The International Solar Alliance came from him. The disaster resilience infrastructure came from him. The idea of sustainable lifestyle came from him. Even if you look, his advocacy of millets, that please eat more millets and less cereals. It has a very strong climate implication because millets take less water, it is a greener crop, it is more nutritious, it is a traditional crop in many areas. So today I think we have, from being like let's defend our position kind of mentality, we have actually started embracing and even leading a lot of these conversations. I would say going forward, some of the what I call sunrise industry sectors that I laid out. For me, green, clean tech, EV, These are areas where actually this country has an opportunity to leapfrog. And it will happen only when, and because I'm very happy you asked this in a business meeting, it will happen only when people see the business possibilities in environment. That environment is not an NGO activity. Environment should be embraced as a really a rewarding economic activity where the government actually should set policy directions, but business should actually make a business of it.
Sir, my name is Dhanendra Kumar. I am not one of the past presidents. I am a retired IAS officer. I had gone to call on you when you were ambassador in USA in 2013. And you had read all about me, all my postings. We had such a nice discussion on the Ministry of Defense, defense production. I think your father was also secretary there. You had a very good insights into the World Bank. You had very good insights into the antitrust regime and so on and so forth. And when after about 45 minutes of discussion, when we were coming out, you asked me, do you have a car? And I said, no, I'll take a taxi. And you asked your PA to send your personal car to drop me back. So these are the kind of things due to which, apart from your speeches and so on, which are absolutely straight, make me a fan of you. One question which I wanted, or suggestion which I wanted to give you, that I do frequently visit Singapore, and I noticed that there is a very increasing Chinese influence among the Singaporeans now. And one of the reasons, there was a one full-page feature in Straits Times in my last visit, that a lot of Chinese apps are being flooded, and Singaporean youth are getting addicted to it on lifestyle, on health, on entertainment and so on. So what I wanted to say, as former Secretary Culture, I felt that India is such a rich country in terms of heritage and lifestyle and cuisine and many other things, and we have such a big population of Indians in Singapore. If we can somehow, and not only Singapore, all over the world, where the NRIs are there, and these are the soft tools, soft power, if we can have apps for the youth, which take them to Indian products and so on, probably that may be good, sir.
Well, I think the issue you flagged is something which has been, debated for some time. And in a way, the suggestion which you have made, which I think is very considered, is also something which we have looked at. My sense today, and really for me, the last 2-3 months have been very almost an education, because I think I've traveled so much in the country and often to places where normally, someone from my responsibility normally would not go. And the sense I have today is that there's a lot of pride in the country, in its history, civilization, heritage, etc. Now, this is very important because the youth have the talent to express that pride exactly in these kinds of domains. That if I don't know if you have grandchildren, but do look at what they are actually looking at, and all of us might be a little bit surprised at the kind of things that they do and they see, and how much actually of what I would say for me, my children's era was a kind of Amar Chitrakatha era. Okay, today, if one looks at how that has digitized into so many, games and apps, So I take your point. My sense is we are actually heading in that direction, but certainly it is the intent of the government to encourage, that way more contemporary, more effective ways, because those countries, I more than even China, people regard Korea as a standout case. That if you look at Korea's cultural impact on the world, especially on younger people, it has been disproportionately impactful in a good way. I think there are best practices out there. I'm very glad you brought up the matter.
Nitin.
Can I?
Hi, Dr. Jaishankar, I'm enamored by your politics. There's not one podcast or one YouTube press conference that I've missed. So I'm an IITian, and 2008 I graduated and immediately went to London because I saw greener pastures over there. In 2014, after the Modi government got elected, 2015, I packed my bags and said, "Wapis apne desh chalte hain," and I came here. Created 2 unicorns since then, and I've been absolutely amazed by what you and the government have managed to do. And so my question is actually slightly different. So in this era, from 2014 to 19, there was reverse brain drain happening at a very rapid pace. So now I read a very surprising report in TOI where they are saying that brain drain has again started to the US. So there was a report published either in 21 or 23. I can't remember the exact time. So I just wanted your views on that. And if at all that is there, and it's actually counterintuitive why that would happen, but if at all that is there, what can we do to curb it and get our best brains back into the country? Because this is the place to be. I mean, there is no doubt about that.
My sense is we are moving out of an era of brain drain into a period of mobility, which is people are not limited in terms of defining where they want to work, with whom they want to work. This is an era we are going to be moving into. And if you look at, typically people say history changes when there are sharp technology changes. We are in the next 20 years going to see tremendous demographic changes in the world. I mean, if you look seriously at today global demographics and kind of see how precipitous the drops are going to be in many, many societies. So what it will do, what it is actually already doing, is it is creating this global workplace. Now we have to ask ourselves, see, if we look at it in terms of brain drain, it becomes much more a kind of a protectionist mentality. I would rather we compete. I would rather we, someone who's mobile, say someone like you didn't come back to India because, government said, please come back. You came back to India because in your own judgment, you had opportunities here. I can see if we keep growing at this 7, 8, 9% over the next 30, 40 years, I can actually see this mobility, leveling out, and I don't want to lose out also on global opportunities, because in many cases that can become a business for me in India. That I can, today I tell people, we are saying make in India. I think, in 5, 6, 7 years, we'll be saying work in India. Work in India, work for the world. That many businesses, they will not have the volumes really to support business out there.
Last 2 questions only. Just
Good evening, sir. I have 2 questions for you today.
only one. Last.
2 small questions which are interrelated. So you mentioned in your speech that you have witnessed how COVID impacted our lives, and it was a very stressful period, and the entire government machinery was fighting to keep save the lives of people. But it has been like, I am a surgeon. I have during that period advocated on the media, off the media, how people, until they get the second dose, first dose, how can they raise their immunity by healthy lifestyle choices and certain supplements, even if they've not got the doses.
Question.
Yeah. So the question is, sir, the question is that in recent media, doctors group have reported lots of side effects many people have witnessed for the vaccine. And since we all have high regard for whatever government is advocating to us, and it has been brought into the light about the side effects of the vaccine, and also how inadequate our infrastructure was in fighting the epidemic that we saw. And we also have seen more of new cases coming up in Maharashtra. Do you have some reforms or new infrastructure planning in the health sector? And the second related question is that since we are expecting recession across the world. India is least affected, and the best country, which is like having the best GDP, 6.5 compared to UK recession and US recession. So, and considering that, as Mr. Dalmia pointed, many people, foreign investors, are now interested in investing into India, and the Indian people living abroad are bridges now to bring investment. Is the External Affairs Ministry considering some reforms or moves to bring more investment and US investments through the bridges, like Indian bond, US people?
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take the last question also, because then I'd like to. Yeah.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you for your patience. I'm Dr. Upasana. I represent academia. And this is a moment of truth for me. I have spent 20 years teaching my students, and each time I come to the chamber for every event, they're a witness to that, and I come with so many students. Today I took a day off just because I wanted to listen to you. And with me is my son, Gen Z, who doesn't go with me anywhere, but he's today to listen here to you.
Sir, you are very favorite, sir, of everyone in the country, sir.
So we are pressing the button for the next 100 years to come, so you can live at peace. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question. Sir.
Just one
Sir, I had
vision
a
statement
question.
for 2047 on the context of our meet today. My vision of Viksit Bharat is end of constant injection of conspiracy theories, censorship, and subversion of ideologies to stop from foreign forces targeting our nation for over so many hundreds of years, and a clear mandate of making people at large aware of it, so no one can take the advantage of the gullible who have been targeted because of our previous governments who didn't care to break the chains of strategic imperial laws that kept us slave, and the echoes of which.
No, he's giving me the answer.
Just one very short question.
Yeah, I wrote it just right away, and what I would love to do is, how do we counter all the Chechens within our nation, so we can become the Vishwaguru?
Simple answer, press the right button.
Just one very short question.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah, very short question. Is moving away from economics and into the core sector of foreign affairs. How close or how far are we from getting a permanent seat in the Security Council of the United Nations? And is it getting the right kind of importance in your agenda that it deserves?
Sure. Okay. I think you had one. Let's close with this.
Good evening, sir. I'm Karan Anand. I'm from the Ministry of Defense. And at your level, I have a suggestion, sir, since we are in parallel ministries in the government. For India to become Viksit Bharat, and my 3 years experience in the MOD is that we always talk of a whole of nation approach. And I think it's high time we need to have a whole of government approach, whole of nation approach, pan ministries to make this happen in a quick time frame.
Okay. So let me start with the doctor's question there. What is now, look, COVID was an extraordinary event for which there were extraordinary responses. Today, after the event, people would still be debating. I think that's legitimate. People have raised questions. People have answered many of those questions. In fact, I just saw an interview by Soumya Swaminathan, who's the additional DG WHO, dealing with vaccines and, side effects and all of that. For me, there were 2 points. One, the fact that in a crisis, we were capable of gearing up our system and responding. That was one takeaway. Number 2, that we were actually capable of producing many things on scale. That this was a case where we had a really massive vaccine production, not only vaccine, everything, even something like paracetamol. At that time, I think paracetamol was produced 20x over the normal production. And we actually had even an invent in India vaccine, that one of our companies created their own. So I say this because to me, it shows this country has capabilities to do things on its own. We can find our solutions. We must have confidence. When we do find our solutions, we must promote it. We mustn't run it down. So I do, because even today, look, there are people who say, no, we are incapable of manufacturing. We can never compete. We shouldn't do. China has gone so far ahead that we should not even try. But that would then leave us for the next 100 years completely at the exposure of another country. I don't think that's what the people of India want. I don't think our national security actually wants that. So and the fact is today, that when it comes to health reform, that is something, health investments, I think that is something which is kind of very much, they're all linked, okay? I mean, when you look at all these yojanas that the government does, we may think Ayushman Bharat is a health program. But even something like Jal Jeevan, see, when you link a house to piped water, look at the health implications of that, Look actually at the fact that the educational implications of that the girl of that house would have been sent to get water, is now sent to school instead. So each of these is actually a dot on the journey towards Viksit Bharat, and we must keep, that holistic, all of the government, all of the country, a full picture, because the moment we start thinking it as silos, then it doesn't work so well. So I'll conclude with that last answer, which is on the Security Council. My sense is things are moving in a positive direction. There will be people who will resist it, because nobody, everybody competes, nobody wants anybody else to get ahead. But if you ask me a sense, which way is it moving? I think it is moving favorably. I think more and more countries recognize today what a strong case India has, and more countries accept the UN itself needs to be reformed. There's no Africa there, there's no Latin America there, there are very few developing countries out there. I think that also is a fact. So I feel as part of Viksit Bharat, the Viksit Bharat will have many faces, many expressions, but UN Security Council will be one of them.